The dungeon was silent. It was a silence so heavy that it felt alive. The walls were damp, black stone dripping with water. Chains rattled softly whenever she moved, but she had not moved in days, maybe weeks. The alien girl sat curled in the corner, her arms wrapped around her knees. Her skin was pale, almost glowing in the dark, and her eyes were faint lights that no longer burned strong. She had been chained in darkness for years. Her name was forgotten even to herself, because no one had spoken it for so long. She remembered only pain, the iron biting her wrists, the hunger that never ended, and the sound of guards laughing outside her cell. Time was broken here. There was no day, no night, only endless shadows. Sometimes she wondered if she was the last living creature in the universe. Perhaps this was her grave, a prison that would never open. Her breath was weak. Her thoughts came. Slowly, she closed her eyes, wishing for sleep that would never end. And then footsteps. At first, soft, distant, but real. She opened her eyes, heart racing. Footsteps meant pain. Footsteps meant beatings. The guards had returned, she thought. Her body trembled as chains rattled loudly, betraying her fear. But something was strange. The footsteps did not sound cruel. They were steady, careful, almost hesitant. A shadow appeared at the iron bars of her dungeon. The girl squinted, her weak eyes glowing faintly. It was not a guard. It was a human. He wore simple clothes, not the armor of soldiers. And his eyes were not cold. They were wide with shock, filled with pity. He stared at her as if he had seen a ghost. The girl pulled back, pressing herself against the wall. Her voice was dry, broken from silence. "Don't," she whispered, expecting pain. But the human did not raise a weapon. He reached into his bag and pulled out a small bottle, water, clear and shining. He slid it through the bars toward her. Her trembling hand reached for it, but she stopped. Why would a human bring kindness into this place of cruelty? The human's voice was low, almost a whisper. "Drink, please," he said. The sound of kindness made her chest ache. She wanted to believe, but belief was dangerous still. Thirst was stronger than fear. She took the bottle with shaking hands. Pressing it to her lips, the cold water slid down her throat, burning and healing at the same time. Her eyes filled with tears, the first in years. The human crouched lower, looking through the bars. "Who did this to you?" he asked softly. His voice carried something she had forgotten existed: gentleness. The girl stared, her lips trembling. She had no answer, only memories of endless chains. He frowned, his hands gripping the iron bars tightly. "I swear," he muttered. "This is wrong." She wanted to laugh, but her throat was too dry. Wrong? Her whole life had been wrong. For years she had been nothing but a chained creature, unseen and unwanted. Yet this man looked at her as if she was someone. Not a beast, not a prisoner, but someone. The thought terrified her more than the chains. Hope was dangerous. Hope hurt worse than hunger. The human stayed longer than any guard ever had. He asked no cruel questions. He gave no orders. Instead, he looked at her as if she mattered. She felt his gaze burning into her darkness. Her heart thumped painfully. Why was he here? Why now? And most of all, why did his eyes carry kindness? The girl closed her eyes, pressing her forehead against the cold stone. She whispered to herself, too soft for him to hear, "It cannot be real." But when she opened them again, the human was still there, watching her with steady eyes. He looked as if he was fighting a war inside his own mind. Finally, he stood, his shadow stretching tall against the torchlight. "I will return," he said quietly. Her breath caught in her throat. No one ever promised to return. No one ever had. He stepped back into the shadows. His footsteps faded. The dungeon grew silent once more. But the silence was different now. It carried a question, a spark, a small flicker of something she thought long dead. Hope, and yet her body shook, because hope was more frightening than darkness. The chains clinked as she wrapped her arms around herself tighter. For the first time in years, her heart whispered a thought she could not stop. What if he really comes back? The dungeon had returned to silence, yet something had changed. The girl's chains still bit her wrists, her stomach still ached from hunger, and the shadows still pressed against her like a second skin, but her heart refused to be quiet. It beat faster than before, echoing louder than the dripping water. Because someone had come, and someone had promised to return. She tried to push the thought away. Humans had only brought her pain. Why would one suddenly act different? Her mind told her it was a trick, a cruel game. But her heart clung to the memory of his voice, gentle, uncertain, yet filled with something she had not heard in years, kindness. She leaned back against the wall, her glowing eyes half shut. The darkness swallowed her once more, but in that darkness she saw the human's face. The way his eyes had widened at her suffering, the way his hand had trembled when he gave her water, that image burned stronger than her fear. Hours passed, or maybe days. Time was broken here. Her body grew weaker, but her mind stayed alive. Her thoughts circled around a single question. Will he really come back? The answer came with soft footsteps. Her head snapped up. The sound was not heavy like the guards. It was careful, steady, almost the same as before. Her chest tightened. She told herself not to hope, but she could not stop. The shadow appeared. Once more at the bars, it was him. The human knelt down, carrying a small cloth bundle. His face looked tense, but when his eyes met hers, they softened. "You're still alive," he whispered, almost as if speaking to himself. She tilted her head, confusion in her glowing gaze. Alive, yes. She was alive, but she had not lived in years. The human opened the bundle, revealing bread. It was rough and small, but to her it looked like treasure. He slid it carefully through the bars. Her hands shook as she reached for it. The first bite filled her mouth with dry crumbs, but she chewed slowly, savoring every grain. Her chest ached with tears she did not let fall. The human's eyes never left her. They were not filled with disgust like the guards. They were not filled with cruelty like the masters. They were filled with something else, something she did not understand: pity, sorrow, and a quiet anger, burning deep inside. Finally, she whispered, her voice still cracked. "Why? Why are you doing this?" Her question hung heavy in the air. The human blinked, as if surprised by her words. "I don't know," he admitted softly. "Maybe because no one else will." Her glowing eyes widened. "No one else will." The words pierced her deeper than chains. For years, no one had chosen her side. Until now, he leaned closer, his face half in torchlight, half in shadow. "My name is Kale," he said quietly. It was the first name she had heard in years. The sound felt strange and warm. She did not give her name. Not yet. It was buried too deep, hidden under pain. Kale looked around nervously. "If they see me here, I'm dead," he whispered, but I couldn't stay away. She blinked at him, her lips parting. Why would anyone risk their life for a chained alien girl? Her mind screamed it was foolish. Her heart whispered it was something else: humanity. For a long moment, they stared at each other through the bars, her glowing eyes locked with his tired human ones. Two beings from different worlds, trapped in the same silence. The girl shifted slightly. Pulling her thin arms around herself, Kale frowned, noticing how her bones showed beneath her skin. "You don't belong in chains," he said softly. His voice was sharp, filled with quiet fury. "You don't deserve this." She wanted to answer, but words broke in her throat. Instead, she lowered her eyes. Hiding the storm inside her chest, the sound of footsteps echoed suddenly down the corridor. Her body stiffened, fear flooding her veins. Kale's head jerked up, his eyes wide. He quickly pressed a finger to his lips. "Quiet," he whispered. The sound grew louder. Boots striking stone. Kale stood, his face tight with panic. He backed away from the bars, slipping into the shadows. The girl's heart pounded as torches flared in the distance. 2 guards appeared, laughing as they walked past. They didn't look inside. They didn't notice her trembling. They kept walking, their voices fading. When the sound was gone, Kale returned to the bars. His breathing was sharp, his face pale. "That was close," he muttered. He crouched low. Again, his voice urgent. "Listen to me," he said. "I will come back again, but you must trust me." Her glowing eyes locked on him. Trust, a word that felt heavy, almost impossible. Yet when she looked into his eyes, she felt the edges of it. Kale gripped the bars tightly, his voice a whisper of steel. "I promise you, this one day, I'll take you out of here." Her heart stopped. The words echoed louder than the chains. Freedom. It was a dream she had buried long ago, and yet this human had spoken it aloud. He pulled back, fear still on his face. "I must go," he said. "But remember, we'll return." Then he vanished into the shadows once more, leaving her alone, but not the same. She pressed her forehead against the cold iron, her chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. For the first time in years, her darkness was broken by something more dangerous than cruelty, hope, and as she closed her eyes, she whispered a thought that burned in her heart. What if he truly meant it? The dungeon smelled of rust and old stone. The chains around her wrists pressed deeper into her skin. But her thoughts were no longer trapped in darkness. They circled around a single figure, Kale, the human who had given her water, food, and pay. Something far more dangerous. Hope. She sat against the wall, her eyes glowing faintly in the shadows. Every sound in the corridor made her heart race. Was it him again, or only the guards? Her body still ached, her stomach twisted with hunger, but her mind stayed awake. Alive in a way it had not been for years, the sound of footsteps came again. Soft, careful, the way only he walked. Her head lifted, her breath quickened, and there he was appearing out of the shadows. Kale crouched low near the bars, carrying another small bundle in his hands. The torchlight touched his face, showing worry and exhaustion. But his eyes lit up when they found hers. "You're still here," he whispered, almost with relief. The girl tilted her head, her voice quiet and broken. "Why do you return?" Kale looked at her, his jaw tightening. "Because leaving you here feels like a crime," he said. "You don't belong in chains." Her hands tightened around her knees. She wanted to believe him, but belief was dangerous. "Humans put me here," she said softly. "Why should I trust one?" Kale's eyes flickered with pain. "I know," he admitted. "And maybe you shouldn't trust me, but I swear to you, I'm not like them." He pushed the bundle through the bars, bread and a small piece of dried meat. She reached for it. Slowly, her thin fingers trembling. Every bite was life. Every swallow a reminder that she was still alive. Kale watched her carefully, his face tense. Then he leaned closer, lowering his voice. "I can't keep sneaking in like this," he said. "Sooner or later, someone will notice." Her glowing eyes lifted to his. A flicker of fear touched her voice. "Then why risk it?" Kale's answer was sharp, certain, "Because you don't deserve this." The words struck her chest like fire. No one had ever spoken them before. For a long moment, they only stared at each other, her glowing eyes searching his human ones. He was fragile, small compared to the armored guards. Yet something inside him felt stronger than all their cruelty. Finally, he whispered, "I will get you out of here." The girl froze, her heart skipped, her breath caught. The promise was too big, too heavy. Freedom, the word itself felt like a lie. Her lips trembled as she whispered, No one can. Cale shook his head firmly. I will, he said again, his voice steel. Even if it costs me everything. She looked at him in disbelief. Why would a human risk his life for her? Oh, there was nothing she could give him. Nothing. She could trade only chains and weakness. Her chest ached with confusion, but in his eyes, she saw no deception, only fire. The silence stretched, broken only by the dripping water. Finally, she whispered, almost against her will, why? Cale's lips pressed together, his gaze dark, because it's wrong. He said, because no one deserves to be forgotten in the dark. He leaned closer, his voice lowering. Because you remind me that I'm still human, her glowing. Eyes widened, the words pierced through her like light cutting the shadows. For years, she had been treated like an object. But this man spoke as if she was more than that. Her throat tightened. She had no answer. Only the echo of his promise. Suddenly, footsteps echoed down the corridor. Louder, heavier, the rhythm of guards. Cale's eyes widened. His hand tightened on the bars. Hide the food, he whispered quickly. Her trembling fingers pushed the last crumbs into her mouth. The chains rattled as she pulled her arms tight around herself. Cale slipped back into the shadows. His body pressed against the stone, too. Guards appeared, their voices loud with laughter. One banged his weapon against the bars, making her flinch. Still alive, creature. He sneered. The other laughed. Not for long. They walked past. Never noticing Cale hidden in the dark, their voices faded into the distance. Leaving silence once again, Cale stepped out. His face pale. That was close, he muttered. He crouched again, his voice urgent. You see now, he whispered. They will kill you if you stay, and me too, if they discover this. Her eyes burned with tears she refused to shed. You will die if you try, she said softly. Cale shook his head, his voice sharp. Then I die trying. Her heart pounded. This man was reckless, foolish, yet something in him refused to bend. She felt the dangerous spark of belief flicker inside her chest. It terrified her more than the guards, she whispered, her voice shaking. You promise? Cale met her eyes, steady and strong. I promise. The dungeon grew quiet once more. But the silence was not the same. The chains around her wrists felt heavy still, yet her heart carried something new. A dangerous weight, a dangerous hope, as Cale vanished into the shadows again. She curled against the cold wall, her glowing eyes wide open, refusing sleep. The promise echoed in her mind. Louder than the silence, he said he would free me. And though fear clawed at her, one thought refused. To die, what if he truly keeps his promise? The dungeon was silent again, but silence no longer felt the same. It was not empty anymore, it was filled with the memory of his words. I will get you out of here. That promise burned in her mind like a torch in endless night. She sat against the wall, her wrists aching from the chains, her body weak but her heart restless. Every sound in the corridor made her tremble. Every whisper of footsteps made her hope. The fear of disappointment battled with the hunger of belief. Was it possible? Could he really free her? The question lived inside her until the answer came. Soft footsteps, careful, measured. She lifted her head, her glowing eyes catching faint light. And there he was again, Cale, the human who risked death to return. He crouched by the bars, his face tense, his breathing sharp. But his eyes still carried that same fire. You're alive, he whispered. The girl tilted her head, her voice low. You came back. Cale gave a small smile. I said I would, from under his cloak. He pulled out a small loaf of bread. But when he handed it to her, she noticed something else hidden beneath the bread. Wrapped carefully in cloth, a piece of metal, thin and sharp. Her glowing eyes widened. It was a key. Her breath caught in her throat. She looked at him in shock. Kale's expression grew serious. "Don't show it," he whispered, his voice urgent. "Eat the bread. Hide the key." Her trembling fingers took it, hiding the cloth under her thin body. Her heart pounded. Was this real? Was this freedom? She bit into the bread slowly, pretending to chew as if nothing had changed. But inside her chest, her heart thundered. The cold iron that bound her wrists suddenly felt less strong, less eternal. Kale leaned closer, his voice sharp and low. "Tomorrow night," he said, "when the guards are drunk, I'll come back. Be ready." Her glowing eyes locked onto his. Fear and hope battled in her chest. "Tomorrow?" she whispered. Kale nodded firmly. "Tomorrow." The sound of laughter echoed down the corridor. Kale's eyes widened. "Quick," he hissed. The girl shoved the last crumbs of bread into her mouth, hiding the cloth deeper beneath her thin blanket of straw. Chains rattled as she shifted into her usual place, her body curling small. The torchlight grew stronger. 2 guards appeared, their boots striking the stone floor. Kale stood tall, his face changing instantly. He grabbed the bars and shook them as if checking the strength. "Still alive," he muttered loudly, his voice different. One guard laughed. "Why waste your time on that thing?" Kale shrugged, pretending to inspect the chains. "If it dies too soon, the masters will be angry," he said coldly. The girl froze, her glowing eyes wide. His act was perfect. The guards only smirked and moved on, their laughter fading into the shadows. Kale leaned close again once they were gone. His voice dropped back into a whisper. "See," he said, "we only get one chance." Her heart pounded. She whispered back, "You will be killed." Kale shook his head. "Not if." We moved fast. For a long moment, silence returned between them. Her glowing eyes searched his. He looked tired, worn, but strong. She wanted to ask him why again. Why risk his life for her? But the words stayed trapped inside her throat. Instead, she whispered, "If I run, they will hunt me. If you help me, they will hunt you too." Kale nodded. "Yes," he said quietly, "but I would rather run in the light than live in the dark." Her chest ached at his words. She had forgotten what light even looked like. And yet he spoke as if it was still possible, as if tomorrow it could belong to her. For the first time, her lips almost formed a smile. It was small, weak, but real. Kale's eyes softened when he saw it. For a brief moment, the chains did not feel so heavy. But the silence ended quickly. Far away, a horn blew, a long, deep sound that made the stones tremble. Kale's face turned pale. "They're calling for patrol," he muttered. He pulled back quickly, his shadow stretching across the wall. "I must go," he said. "Remember tomorrow night." Her glowing eyes followed him desperately. "Promise?" she whispered, Kale's gaze locked on hers. "I promise," he said again. Then he vanished into the shadows. The dungeon grew silent once more, but the silence was no longer cold. Beneath her, hidden in straw, the key pressed against her skin. She curled around it, clutching it as if it was life itself. Her body still chained, her stomach still empty. But her heart carried fire. "Tomorrow night," she whispered to herself. Tomorrow, yet fear crept into her thoughts. What if the plan failed? What if the guards caught them? What if Kale never returned? She shivered in the dark, the chains rattling softly. Her glowing eyes stared into nothing, and still the question would not leave her. What if tomorrow is the night we both die? The night was dark, but not the same darkness that had trapped her for years. Tonight, something different stirred in the air. Something dangerous, but full of possibility. The alien girl sat in the corner of her dungeon, clutching the hidden key against her chest. Her glowing eyes flickered, reflecting the faint torchlight. Her heart thumped violently. Tomorrow night was no longer a dream, was almost here. The corridor outside was quiet, too quiet. Every creak of stone underfoot made her flinch. Every whisper of wind through cracks in the walls sounded like footsteps. She tried to control her breathing, but excitement and fear tangled together. She could almost taste freedom, almost feel the night air on her skin, almost hear the stars above. Then the footsteps came. Careful and steady, her glowing eyes widened. Cale, true to his promise, had returned. He crouched low by the bars, carrying a small sack in his hands. His face was pale, tired, but fierce. His eyes locked on hers with a fire she had never seen before. "Tonight," he whispered, "we move." Her chest tightened, chains rattled as she shifted. The fear that had held her for years rose like a wave, but so did hope. He slid the sack through the bars toward her. Inside, more bread, dried meat, and a small water flask, but more importantly, a thin rope for the chains. Her hands shook as she pulled the items from the sack. Cale pressed a finger to his lips. "Quick," he hissed. "The guards will be asleep soon, but we have little time." The girl nodded, swallowing dry tears of anticipation for the first time. She felt the taste of possibility. A chance to leave the dungeon, leave the darkness. Hours passed slowly. The guards' footsteps grew heavier, then lighter. Finally, the distant sounds of revelry echoed through the stone halls. Drunken laughter, loud voices, the clinking of mugs. Their attention had drifted. Their discipline broken. Cale's eyes glimmered. "Now," he whispered, and he knelt again by the bars, unlocking the hidden lock she had noticed earlier. The chains that had bound her wrists for years were now within reach. Her glowing hands trembled as she pushed the chains. Feeling the cold metal bite into her skin, every movement was slow and careful. Her heart thudded in fear and excitement. Cale's shadow loomed over her. He whispered, almost free, and for the first time, she dared to believe freedom was near. Suddenly, a torchlight flickered in the corridor. Her chest froze. Cale's eyes narrowed. A guard, drunk but not blind, stumbled near. Cale's voice dropped to a hiss. "Stay still." Her hands trembled as she held the chain. The guard passed, unaware. Mumbling to himself, the girl exhaled quietly, relief flooding. Her Cale's hand pressed briefly over hers. Guiding her, "Almost there," he murmured. The chains fell open. Clattering softly on the stone floor, the girl's wrists were free. Her body felt weak, but alive. Cale extended his hand. She took it, gripping tightly. Together, they moved. Through the dungeon shadows, careful, silent, every step could be discovery. Every sound a warning. Her glowing eyes darted to the exit, to the promise of night air. Then the alarm sounded a horn, shrill and loud. Her heart leaped into her throat. Cale pushed her down, whispering urgently. They found the key missing. Soldiers shouted in the distance, boots striking stone. The dungeon was alive with chaos. Cale grabbed her hand, pulling her along. "Run," he shouted. They dashed through the corridors. Torches flared, casting giant shadows on the walls. The girl's glowing eyes guided her through the maze of stone. Cale fought off two guards. Pushing them aside, she stumbled, but he caught her. Lifting her over a low wall, her chest burned from running. Her body weak from years in chains. But the air was cool, real, alive. They reached the final gate, the heavy metal doors to the outside world. Cale pushed with all his strength, the hinges groaning. The girl's hands pressed against the door. Feeling the first real breeze in years. Smoke rose in the distance. Guards had set fire to the corridor. The dungeon behind them burned. Chaos everywhere. Yet they ran into the night. Free, her glowing eyes widened in awe at the moonlight above. And as they escaped into the forest beyond the dungeon walls, her chest heaved with both exhaustion and wonder. Cale looked down at her, his face streaked with sweat and blood. "You're safe," he said. She could only nod, trembling. The night sky felt unreal, the stars almost alien. But for the first time, she smiled, weakly but truly. Her chains were gone, her prison destroyed, yet in the distance, shadows moved. Hunters, soldiers, searching for them, the fire behind them lit. The night, revealing that their flight was only the beginning. Her glowing eyes met Kale's, and she understood freedom came at a price they had not yet paid. And as the first dawn began to touch the forest, she whispered to herself, "This night is only the start of our fight for real freedom." The forest was alive with shadows. Every branch moved as if watching them. Every rustle of leaves whispered danger. The alien girl's glowing eyes darted nervously. Her body was weak from years of chains, her muscles trembling with exhaustion. Kale's hand gripped hers tightly, guiding her through the dark underbrush. They had escaped the dungeon, but freedom was not yet safe. Behind them, the dungeon burned. Flames licked the stone walls. Shouts and screams echoed in the distance. Soldiers were searching, and hounds would soon follow. The girl's chest heaved. Fear and hope battled in her heart. For the first time in years, she could feel the wind on her face. And it terrified her. Kale moved fast, his eyes scanning the darkness. He whispered instructions, low and urgent. "Stay close," he said. "Do not look back." Her glowing eyes followed him. Every shadow seemed alive, every sound a threat, but Kale's presence was strong. He was real, human, and willing to risk everything for her. Suddenly, a snapping twig echoed nearby. The girl froze. Kale pulled her behind a thick tree, pressing her close. His eyes scanned the forest quickly. Then he relaxed slightly. "Nothing," he whispered, but her heart still pounded. She realized how dangerous the world outside the dungeon could be. Even when free, she was hunted. They moved again, silently, cautiously. Branches cut at her face. Roots grabbed at her feet. Every step was a battle. But Kale encouraged her, almost. "There," he said. "Keep moving." Her glowing eyes reflected determination and fear. Freedom felt strange. Her body ached. Her legs wanted to collapse, but she could not stop. Hours passed as they fled deeper into the forest. The sounds of pursuit grew distant. For a moment, she allowed herself to hope. Kale finally slowed. Letting her catch her breath, he pressed a hand to her shoulder. "You're stronger than you." "Think," he said. Her glowing eyes blinked in disbelief. Strength. She had felt nothing but weakness for years, and yet, here he was, telling her she could survive. She wanted to speak, to thank him, but words caught in her throat. Instead, she looked at him silently, her heart beating faster for the first time. She felt seen, not as a prisoner, but as someone alive. Kale's gaze softened. "You're not alone," he whispered, and the words wrapped around her like a shield, a feeling she had forgotten, warmth, safety. Trust. Suddenly, the forest opened. Into a small clearing, the moonlight spilled across the ground. She could see the stars above. For a moment, she forgot to breathe. The world was so wide, so strange, so beautiful. Kale knelt beside her, offering water from his flask. She drank slowly, feeling life return to her veins. Her glowing eyes sparkled faintly, a reminder that, even in darkness, light could survive, but the peace did not last. A howl echoed through the trees. Sharp and terrifying, Kale's eyes widened. "They found us," he muttered. The girl's glowing eyes followed the sound. Shapes moved in the darkness, soldiers and hounds closing in. Her body trembled. Fear threatened to overwhelm her. Kale pulled her up, holding her close. "We have to run faster," he said. "Follow me." They dashed through the trees, branches tearing at their clothes and skin. The hounds barked and growled, their claws digging into the earth. Soldiers shouted behind them, guns glinting in the moonlight. Her heart pounded violently. Her legs? Burned, but she ran, guided by Kale's steady hand. He fought off obstacles in their path, pushing her over fallen logs, guiding her around traps. Every step felt like a test, every breath a risk. Finally, they reached a river, dark and wide. Water rushing fast, Kale paused, looking at the current. The only way, he muttered. She looked at him, terrified, but there was no other choice. He grabbed her hand, holding it tight. Together, they plunged into the water, cold and fierce. The current tried to pull them back. Her glowing eyes burned with determination. She clung to him, refusing to let go. They reached the far bank, soaked and exhausted. The hounds and soldiers had stopped at the river's edge. Unwilling to follow, her chest heaved, her body shook, but for the first time, she felt alive. Kale looked at her, a small smile breaking across his face. "We made it," he whispered. She could only nod. Tears of relief in her glowing eyes, yet even in safety, the forest felt strange. Unknown, dangerous. Freedom was not complete. The journey was not over. She realized that every step forward would bring more challenges, but she was no longer alone. Kale was with her, and together they could face what came next. As they collapsed by the riverbank, the first light of dawn touching the forest. She whispered quietly, "The darkness is behind us, but the unknown waits ahead, and we must run, faster than fear itself." The forest was quiet, but not peaceful. Shadows stretched long across the ground. Hiding dangers they could not see, the alien girl sat beside Kale, her glowing eyes scanning the darkness. Her wrists were free, her chains gone, but every step into the unknown reminded her that freedom carried risks. Her body ached from running, her stomach growled from hunger. And yet her mind was alive with thoughts she had not dared to think in years. Kale offered her water, and she took it slowly. Every drop a reminder that she was still alive, still human in a strange way. He watched her closely, eyes filled with concern. "You're holding back," he whispered. Her gaze dropped. Unsure if she could trust anyone. Humans had only brought pain before. Even now, with his kindness, fear clawed at her chest. I don't know if I can," she admitted quietly. Her glowing eyes met his. Filled with hesitation, Kale nodded. "Understanding, I know," he said. "Trust is not given in a moment like this. It is built, slowly, carefully, but we have to start somewhere." The girl looked at him, her glowing eyes narrowing. For years, she had been alone. Abandoned, chained. To trust someone now felt like walking into a trap. But Kale's gaze was steady, unwavering. Even in the darkness of the forest, he seemed certain, and certainty was something she had forgotten existed. They moved again, silently, through the trees. Every step was careful, avoiding broken branches and glowing eyes of night creatures. Kale kept one hand near his weapon, ready for any attack. She followed closely, her glowing eyes alert, every sound making her jump, but she stayed with him, step by step. The fragile thread of trust growing between them. Suddenly, a shadow moved ahead. Her body froze. Kale raised a hand, signaling her to stay low. A patrol of soldiers passed. Unaware of the two figures hidden in the brush, the girl's chest heaved. Her fear surged. But Kale's calm presence steadied her. She realized that survival was not only about strength, but also about who you trusted when the soldiers passed. Kale exhaled. "They'll be back," he muttered. The girl nodded, still trembling. "You really think we can escape them completely?" she asked softly. Kale shook his head. "No one escapes completely," he said. "But we can survive if we are careful, and we must trust each other to do that." Her glowing eyes blinked slowly. Trust, she thought, still felt fragile and dangerous. But she also understood that without it, they were lost. She reached out her hand hesitantly. Kale took it, gripping firmly. The connection was small, but it was enough to give her courage. enough to make her feel like maybe, just maybe, she was not alone anymore. Hours passed as they moved deeper into the forest. Night creatures stirred, rustling leaves and snapping branches. Every sound made her pulse race. Kale's voice whispered guidance. "Stay close," he said. Her glowing eyes followed him like a beacon. She realized that survival was not only about escaping chains, but about learning to rely on someone else at a small clearing. Kale stopped. Crouching to catch his breath, he offered her more water and a small piece of dried meat. She took it. Slowly, watching him, every gesture, every word seemed honest. But the memory of years in chains made her wary. "How do I know you won't leave me?" she asked quietly. Kale's eyes met hers, serious, unflinching. "I won't," he said. "Not now, not ever. But you have to promise me something too." She looked at him curiously. "Promise me that you'll try to trust me, even if it's hard." Her glowing eyes flickered. Trust was dangerous, but maybe, just maybe. This human was different. She nodded slowly. "I'll try," she whispered. Kale smiled faintly. "That's all I ask," he said. The forest around them seemed less threatening in that moment. The bond between them growing, fragile but real, suddenly. The distant howl of hounds pierced the night. Her chest tightened, fear returning like a wave. Kale grabbed her hand, pulling her close. "We have to keep moving," he said urgently. Her glowing eyes shone bright in the dark. The fragile trust between them, strengthened by danger, she understood. Now that survival and freedom depended on it. As they vanished deeper into the shadows of the forest, every rustle, every distant sound a reminder of the hunters behind. She whispered quietly to herself, "I trust him, but can trust survive in a world like this?"